So what's going on, man? It's your boy HD, and I'm back with my reaction videos to you know career related topics, tech topics, you name it. And so today we will be reacting to one of the channels that I actually like to watch a lot. He always has some good takes, and I really want to put my audience maybe onto his content there. I'm familiar with him, and his channel is A Life After Layoff. So actually, this video is entitled "Planned Layoffs Have Quadrupled This Year. Is Remote Work Being Targeted?" So let's go ahead and check this video out.
Hey everybody, it's Brian from A Life After Layoff, and today I want to talk about the state of the labor market right now with all of the layoffs and all of the disruptions and all the craziness that's been going on. And if you've been paying attention to anything that's going on in the news, you realize that this is pretty unprecedented times. We've got mass layoffs by these big tech firms. It's starting to spill into other industries. And then you've got employers forcing the issue of getting people to return back into the office against their will. And then, of course, tracking people's productivity. And you've got the whole disruption of AI entering into the workforce with an absolute boom. So there's lots of things that are going on in today's job market. And you, as a career-minded person, have a lot to think about and how you want to strategically position yourself to take advantage of. Or
just got to pause it real quick because I don't want to get copyright strike. But like I said, you can always tell from his channel, man, he really already knows what he's talking about. And I said in my podcast video that's coming out this week is that I have seen a lot less remote roles, especially when it comes to cybersecurity, a lot less for whatever reason. They do want people to be more hybrid and come in. So if that's you, then go ahead and come in. As for me, hybrid just doesn't work for me, at least right now, just because I do so much stuff and it limits what I can do with helping my clients and everything else I do throughout the day. So that's the reason why I do not like doing hybrid. But let's get back in the video.
at least protect yourself from a possible income disruption or hiccup in your career. And on this channel, we talk about how to act like the CEO of your career. So maybe it's time to start playing a little bit of chess so we can navigate through this effectively. So let's talk about an interesting jobs report that just came out. What's going on in the labor market, maybe what we can expect to see going forward, and maybe how you can start to position yourself. But before we get too far into it, if you're interested in learning more about how to act like the CEO of your career, how to take ownership, I actually created a brand new free newsletter that you can check out about it and saying, I never thought it would happen to me. And obviously I can sympathize with them, having gone through a layoff myself in my past. But I also think that we have to be eyes wide open. And if you're somebody that's especially in a high risk job, and I'm thinking a technical role, I'm thinking somebody that works in big tech and software developers, I'm looking at you, and certainly human resources and recruitment has been hit extremely hard. But if you're working in a relative...
Hey, he's right about that. Especially he said recruitment, human resources, software developers. I've seen them being hit hard. Not so much as people in cyber, but I've seen some people in cyber get laid off. And those are more so companies whose everything depends on who buys their product. Those companies, can have their ups and downs, their ebbs and flows, especially when they have competitors out there. If they're not the best, those things do get kind of hard to do. So I would always say, man, I would always say, man, stay ahead of the game, pay attention, never not be open to work, because it could happen to you. It happened to me before. Like he said, his channel's called A Life After Layoff. Happened to him before. So you always just want to be looking out for your best self-interest, because nobody will like you will. So I'm gonna get back into the video and we're gonna see what's what.
Stable environment today, and you're in a potentially high risk job type, you might want to start to think about a contingency plan just in case, because honestly, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it and to be scrambling. And that's how we act like the CEO of our career, because we want to put in contingency plans in the event something happens. And if you don't think that leaders in big companies aren't putting together contingency plans for just about any situation, you're being pretty naive. Of course, we've had all these layoffs that are happening. We're going to break down some of those charts here in just a minute. But then we had this surprise from the Department of Labor of adding 339,000 jobs in the month of May. And what that would indicate is that the labor market is being really resilient. Yet if you dig into some of the numbers, there are some kind of fishy things that are going on there. And I'm not quite sure how to interpret it. So I'm going to be digging into that a little bit more, and I'll report back what I find. However, you spend any time on LinkedIn, I get the sense that most people are feeling like the labor market isn't all that strong. And I believe
he's totally right. I have a video that I did about, do entry level cybersecurity jobs actually exist? And I went through what the people were actually listing as jobs that were in cybersecurity. We found out that they were overlapping a lot of different jobs that weren't actually cybersecurity. They had aspects of cyber, but they weren't necessarily cybersecurity jobs. What I think is happening on that study is the same thing. I think we'll see. But I know for me, dealing with clients, people do find it hard about just getting a call back or trying to even just get someone to look their way, especially when they don't have experience. It's just for entry level roles at that. And they're super competitive. So you might find 100, and I've seen some guys like, granted, ironically, people don't apply to the senior level roles as much as they do entry level. So where you might have 200 people that apply for a senior level role, it might be 1,000 that apply for entry level. So that's why one of the things I tell people is if you get your skills up, then when it comes to getting in cyber, you should be all right. But if you don't have your skills up, that first job is probably the hardest to get. But let's continue.
A survey up on my LinkedIn asking people how they felt about the conditions of the labor market, if it was advantageous for them. And an overwhelming majority of people have so far said that they don't feel that it's very strong at all. So what that means is that the average job seeker isn't necessarily feeling that there is an abundance of jobs to go around. Employment processes are very annoying, very lengthy. People are getting ghosted left and right. It's a feeding frenzy for these jobs. And I speak from experience because I've seen jobs posted in the last few months where we received 750 applications in the matter of about 26 hours. So,
hey, listen. You saw that, right? He said 700 within 26 hours. That's a lot. That's a lot to try to be one of 700. It's a lot, man. I don't want to put a pressure on you, man, but I'm just telling you, like, that's why networking is important. Let them continue.
So that tells me that there's a lot of people looking for jobs and there's not nearly as many to go around as these statistics from the Department of Labor might suggest. And I'll ask you, if you're actively looking for a job, do you feel like it's advantageous for you right now? Do you feel like the amount of job opportunities that are out there that you're getting, more importantly, getting responses to, or maybe having recruiters contacting you is about average, it's stronger than usual, or is it below average? I would be curious to know, so leave a comment. But disconcertingly, what I found from Bloomberg is that companies have announced a staggering 417,500 planned layoffs for the first 5 months of 2023. And this is a massive acceleration and more than 4 times the job cuts compared to last year. And
I'm gonna pause it right there again. And that's also facts we've seen from what the Amazons, the Metas, the what are the other all the bigger tech companies. We've seen them lay off a lot of people. And I've also addressed the fact that, hey, they overhired a lot the last 3 years. Some people also, some good people got caught up in that, people that are actually doing their job. At the end of the day, they're trying to keep their bottom line. They're trying to keep on getting revenue and decreasing the expenses. So some of these companies have started to overwork the people that are there now, which I think in the long haul will backfire on them. I think a lot of people are falling out of the glitz and glam or the allure of working for some big name place. That's what it used to be. Oh yeah, I work at Amazon, I work at Meta, I work at Twitter, I work at Apple, Netflix. I forgot Netflix, Google. I think a lot of people are out of that stage. I mean, cool, the money is fine, but now people just say, okay, cool, I might not get that money, but I can go somewhere just as nice, get a great salary, and just relax. So I think that's what people are on. I think we'll see a trend of people stop trying to push people to go to these big tech roles and just look for other jobs that remain vacant in other industries. I'm telling you, the jobs are out there. You just got to be strategic and look for certain skill sets that are needed that you already have that everyone shouldn't have when you're trying to apply to jobs. But let's keep on rocking.
Most of them have been in the tech industry, and I think there's going to be another round of layoffs that will probably be announced. So again, if you're somebody that's sitting there thinking, oh, I survived the first couple of rounds, I should be good, I would just make sure that you're doing everything you can. Learn how to write that resume, get all your ducks in a row, build out your networks, start saving up money, because you don't want to be caught unprepared. But if we jump over to layoffs.fyi, take a look at some of the data there and kind of break down what's going on. January 2023, you can see a massive spike in layoffs that start happening after the first of the year. And that's not typically surprising. Companies will typically wait till the end of their fiscal year. If that happens to fall on December 31st, or they'll wait till after the holiday season to just kind of soften the blow a little bit. And that's why you typically will see an increase in layoffs in January. However, if you look at January 2022, the story looks significantly different, where you only had 510 total employees laid off and only 4 companies announcing in tech in January. That was probably the peak of the feeding frenzy of the gravy train for employees in an employee-driven market. And obviously things have shifted. But when you look at January of this year, so 1 year later, you're looking at 89,514 people laid off and 272 companies who have participated in these layoffs. So it's a massive difference in the number of employers that are participating in these. And you can see it really starting to take shape around May, June of 2022. And the luster started to come off the market about that time. Now, certainly in January, February, March, the first quarter of 2023, we are definitely noticing an increase. The good news is that we're seeing a slowing downtrend as we head into the second half of the year.
Yeah, I think that companies are regulating the workforce. I think everything will eventually balance out. Now, the layoffs, the con of the layoffs was the fact that now you saw, and I've seen this on Blind too. I've seen salaries, a lot of money they were just throwing out to these people. That now you can't get that on the market based on the economy. Some places you can. So you'll have people that were maybe senior level taking entry level jobs now from people. That will be the issue that people run into when it comes to the competition in this freaking tech job market. We're going to listen a little bit more of his video and then we're going to wrap it up.
However, I do feel like this might be another calm before the storm. If you look at 2023, you can see a big increase in retail, consumer, healthcare, and food, and it looks like in sales as well. So those are the sub-industries that we're seeing the biggest increase in layoffs. And a more staggering and updated number, just in the tech industry alone in 2023, 737 tech companies have announced 201,000 employees laid off. Important to note, this isn't necessarily just the United States, this is globally. However, the number is still pretty staggering. And it's basically a who's who of major tech firms. It seems like just about every one of them is having some sort of a layoff. Now, it's also spilling into a lot of the smaller software as a service companies, a lot of the smaller tech firms across multiple industries. And so you're really seeing a big increase. Almost every time I log into LinkedIn, I see another company. I'm like, oh, those guys are laying off too. It just seems like it's very pervasive. I think it's going to start spilling more and more into other industries. But it isn't necessarily as surprising that tech has been hit the hardest, because a lot of the overhiring that happened during the 2021-2022 boom happened in tech. There was a massive exodus from other industries into tech. Of course, everybody was getting huge salaries. They were throwing money at recruiters. I mean, this is silly amounts of money to be a recruiter. Is really good for like 5 minutes to be a recruiter. Certainly, the same thing could go for software developers, where they were getting $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 salaries, which I'm wondering if those days are coming to an end. But you got to keep in mind that Google, Meta, Amazon, these companies are massive. And Amazon has announced they're probably up somewhere around 25,000 people that have been cut. A lot of them have been software developers. I think they just went through a big AWS downsizing. But a lot of these companies that have experienced these big layoffs, the percentages of the population are pretty small, but they're very impactful positions. And
now, we just heard him say the same thing that I just said before we got this spot in the video. So I just want you to keep your eyes peeled, head on a swivel, like we say in football, and just watch.
Positions that were hired during this tech boom. And these big tech firms went out and recruited all these people from other safer industries to come and work at these inflated prices. And unfortunately, it does seem like it's catching up. And the problem with this is also coupled by the fact that now you're seeing a lot of big companies and big CEOs demanding that employees return to work. As you know, in 2020 through 2021, a lot of people, in fact, just about the entire country, moved to remote work. What they discovered is a lot of white collar jobs can be done effectively remotely. And there are people who have thrived in it. However, there's also a subsegment of people who have not thrived in it. In some cases, you've had people kicking back, and this whole thing about quiet quitting, and now you've got this rise in AI where people can automate portions of their job, and in some cases, big portions of their job. And that's a whole other topic that I want to cover in another video.
We're talking the same language, man. That's why this is why I really rock with his channel. I'm gonna let him get to a little bit more, and then I'm gonna wrap it up with my final thoughts.
But with the rise in this AI, employees, especially remote employees, have found that they can automate a lot of the mundane tasks of their job. And essentially, they can kind of kick back a little bit. However, these businesses are also looking at AI very closely and trying to determine what positions they can outsource. So if you're sitting there using AI to make your job easier, you have to think, could I be replaced? Because these companies are now actively looking for it. They're also targeting people who are remote and they want to force people back into the office. And I think in some cases, there has been a decrease in productivity in a certain subsegment of the workforce that has gone remote. And some of these more traditional CEOs are really trying to force them back in. Not to mention, you've got all this real estate that they've paid for, and expensive office space, and all this stuff. And they kind of say it's under the guise or under the assumption that networking and collaboration in person is worth more, that most of your best work gets done when you're actually face to face. And then I think that there's probably some degree of truth to that. However, being somebody that has worked remote for a better part of the last decade, I personally would have no interest in going back into a role where I was required to go into an office 100% of the time. But I do see some value in maybe some sort of a hybrid role. But it's a very disruptive thing when you've been used to working remotely. You've got, say you're somebody that has childcare and you've set up a lifestyle for that, and suddenly you're forced back into the office almost overnight. It can be very disruptive because now you're having to add in childcare, you're having to figure out commutes, you're having to readjust all of your schedules when you've kind of fallen into a groove. So it's not just as easy as saying everybody goes back to their normal.
So, all right, you heard what he was saying. Especially the last part about the remote work is one of those things where it's hit or miss. See, the issue also boils down to you'll have companies that want you to come in, like he was talking about, like, for example, childcare. Okay, if I have to come in now, my kids have to go to daycare. That's an added expense that you didn't give me a raise in my salary for. So you want me to come in now for the same amount of money. Mind you, these last 3 years, I've been doing my job no problem remotely. Now you want me to come in and also try to afford to pay this and whatever other bills I have to go, gas, the time away from my kids I have to spend commuting. I know it sounds like I'm complaining, but these are real things when you have to think about why do I have to come into office? Because a lot of us can't afford to stay right next to the office. not in the house, probably an apartment, but not in the house. So you got to put that into play. That's one of the big things that's coming out. Like, that's what some of the companies not realizing. Hey, okay, are y'all going to pay people more to come in the office? Nobody told y'all to build that big old office and just have it just sitting there. Nobody told you to do that. We don't mind. Now, if you just say, hey, okay, you can come in once a week or once a quarter, whenever you want to come in, cool, that might be better. A lot of times you're going, like I've told you on my previous episodes, go into the office, everybody talking and you can't hear nothing. It's getting on your nerves. You don't really have closed off cubes so people can kind of be in your mix and your business, just walk up on you. It's just, I don't really care for it as much. If I had to, cool, but I don't really like being in the office because there are times like how you like to work at home. Sometimes you can't work that way in the office. So now people are judging you, or why are you on your phone so much, or why are you doing this or that? Mind you, your work is done. Sometimes your work is done, or sometimes you don't even have any work to work on. So it's just one of those things. Like I said, you can learn a lot if you're a person with no experience. You can learn a lot about if you're on a good team and everybody's in office. You can learn a lot if like one of the smartest people is there. So I don't want to tell you in your young career not about going to office. If you don't have kids and all this other stuff, go in office. Do not be gung-ho on want to work remote, because I don't want to say like it's not like a classist thing, whatever, saying like you haven't earned it. But in some instances, beggars can't be choosers. Take what you can get. Just get into the industry, and then after that, go back to being remote. Also, like I said, look for these industries that are still profitable. They're not doing a lot of layoffs, that they've always been getting bonuses every year. Look into those companies, right? They may need you. Now, the salary may not be as big, but it'll still be better than having nothing. But hey, I got his video. It's going to be in the description. Check out his channel, Life After Layoff. Really, a lot of good tips, man. He gives a lot of good tips, and you can tell that we're still like on that same wavelength because I was saying stuff before we even got to the part in his episode, and I hadn't even really watched the episode. So that's what I just want to just tell you guys. Appreciate y'all for rocking with me. I'm going to get back into doing these reactions because I actually like reacting to other people's content. If they are telling somebody something that's good, or if it's not good, I like being the person to tell you, hey, don't listen to what they talk about. It's like BS. So appreciate y'all for rocking with me. It's your boy HD, and I'm out.